She called me nothing. That word hit harder than anything else she ever said to me. That was my wife. The woman I gave 11 years of my life to. She said it at the dinner table, in front of her sister, in front of my own son, and then she laughed, like it was a joke, like I was a joke, but she had no idea what I had already done 2 weeks before that night. By the time she woke up the next morning, the man she called nothing was already gone. If you want to find out how this ends, stay right here with me, and if stories like this speak to something deep inside you, hit that subscribe button. We put out a new story every single week. Now let me take you all the way back to where this began. My name is Daniel. I was 43 years old when my marriage finally broke me, not in the loud dramatic way you see in movies. It broke me quietly, slowly. The way a wall cracks before it falls. You do not notice it at first. You just keep painting over the damage and telling yourself it will be fine. I grew up in a small town in Ohio. My father worked at a steel factory. My mother cleaned houses for other families. We did not have much, but we had each other, and that felt like enough. I learned early that you work hard, you stay loyal, and you never abandon the people who need you. That was the code I lived by. I met Renee when I was 29. She was working at a real estate office downtown. She was sharp and beautiful, and she made me feel like I was somebody. We dated for 2 years, and then I proposed at her favorite restaurant. She cried, I cried. Her parents hugged me like I was already their son. I thought that was the beginning of the best part of my life. And for a while it was. We bought a small house in a suburb outside Columbus. I was working as an operations manager at a mid-sized logistics company. Renee had moved up to become a real estate agent, and she was good at it. We had a son, Marcus. He was 8 years old when everything started to fall apart, and he is the reason I held on as long as I did. The first sign came when Marcus was about 5. Renee started coming home later than usual, not by a few minutes, by hours. She always had an explanation: client dinner, contract meeting, open house that ran long. I believed her every single time because I trusted her, because I was the kind of man who believed the best in the person he loved. Then the phone calls started. She would step outside to take them. She would lower her voice. She would come back in and say it was a client. I noticed, but I did not say anything. I told myself I was being paranoid. I told myself that successful women have demanding careers and I needed to be supportive. But something was shifting inside me. I just could not name it yet. By the time Marcus turned 7, Renee and I were living like roommates more than partners. We slept in the same bed, but we were miles apart. She stopped asking about my day. I stopped expecting her to. We had dinner together most nights because of Marcus, but the conversation was thin. It was all about him, his school, his soccer practice, his homework. The moment he went to bed, the silence between us was so heavy you could feel it pressing on your chest. I want to make that clear. I suggested counseling. She said we did not need it. I planned a weekend trip for the two of us and asked her parents to watch Marcus. She canceled 2 days before, said a big property deal had come up. I cooked her favorite meal one night, set the table properly, lit candles. She came home 2 hours late and ate it cold while scrolling through her phone. I started to feel invisible, not in a self-pitying way. I mean literally invisible, like I was furniture in my own home, like I was a function, not a person. I paid the bills, I fixed things that broke. I drove Marcus to his games. I was useful, but I was not seen. And then came the night that changed everything. It was a Thursday in October. Marcus was at a sleepover at his friend's house. I came home from work around 6:30. The house was quiet, but Renee's car was in the driveway, which surprised me. She was usually not home that early. I walked in and heard her on the phone in the kitchen. I was going to call out and let her know I was home, but something made me stop. Maybe it was the tone of her voice. It was soft in a way it had not been with me in years. I stood in the hallway and I heard her say, and I will never forget this as long as I live, she said, he has no idea. He just goes along with everything. Honestly, Derek, I do not know how much longer I can pretend. I did not move, I did not breathe. She laughed at something the person on the other end said. Then she said, I know, he is just so boring. He thinks working hard and being reliable makes him a good husband. He has no ambition, he has no edge, he is just nothing, you know. Nothing. That word landed in my chest like a stone dropped in still water, and the ripples never stopped. I walked back out the front door as quietly as I had come in. I sat in my car in the driveway for 20 minutes. I did not cry, I did not punch the steering wheel. I just sat there and felt the pieces of 11 years rearranging themselves in my mind. Every late night, every canceled plan, every unanswered question, every moment I had talked myself out of seeing what was right in front of me. I drove to a diner a few miles away. I ordered coffee. I sat there until 9 o'clock at night and I made a decision. Not an angry decision, not a revenge decision, not yet, just a decision to see clearly from that point forward. No more convincing myself, no more painting over the cracks. I went home, she was in bed reading. She looked up and said, "Oh, you're home late." I said yes, work ran long. She nodded and went back to her book. I showered, got into bed beside her and stared at the ceiling until she fell asleep. That night, I started paying attention in a different way. Over the next 3 weeks, I watched everything. I did not snoop through her phone. I did not hire anyone or set traps. I just opened my eyes. I noticed that she took her lunch breaks at the same time on certain days and always drove somewhere instead of staying near her office. I noticed she had started wearing perfume on weekday mornings when she never used to. I noticed she had a second email account open on the home computer one afternoon before she quickly closed the browser. I also noticed something else, something that had nothing to do with her and everything to do with me. I noticed that the house we lived in, the one I had paid the majority of the mortgage on for 9 years, had been quietly put into joint ownership with a clause that Renee had suggested adding 2 years earlier. She had told me it was for estate planning purposes. I had signed without reading carefully enough. It was a mistake that could have cost me everything. I also noticed that she had been making small transfers from our joint savings account, not large amounts, 20 here, 50 there, sometimes 100, spread out over 8 months. Added together, it was close to $9,000. I am not a lawyer, but I know how to read bank statements, and I know how to call one. I contacted an attorney named Paul Greer. He was a divorce lawyer with 20 years of experience. I found him through a friend of a friend. I told him everything. He told me to stop touching the joint accounts entirely. He told me to open a personal account at a different bank that very week. He told me to start documenting everything quietly. Dates, observations, financial records. I did exactly what he said. But here is the part that required the most patience. Paul told me the timing mattered. He said if I moved too soon I might lose leverage. He said I needed to let things develop naturally for a little while, document what I could, and then when the moment came, act decisively and completely. He called it a clean exit. I called it survival. I opened that new account on a Tuesday. I set up a direct deposit redirect so that my paychecks starting the following month would go there instead of the joint account. I began transferring my personal assets. My 401k was already in my name only, which was fortunate. I had a small investment account that Renee did not know about, money I had been quietly saving for years from bonuses and side work. That stayed where it was, untouched. I also called my mother. I did not tell her everything. I just told her I might need to stay with her for a little while soon. She did not ask questions. She said, "Your room is always ready, Daniel." I had to hold the phone away from my face for a moment because I almost lost it right there. The hardest part of this entire period was Marcus. My son, my boy. I had to figure out how to protect him without scaring him. Paul told me that in Ohio, given my role as primary caretaker for Marcus, the daily school pickups, the doctor appointments, the soccer practice runs, all of that was documented and would matter. He told me to keep doing exactly what I was doing, be present, be consistent, be the parent who shows up. I did not miss a single pickup. I did not skip a single game. I made his lunches every morning and I helped him with his reading every night. Not because I was building a case, because he was my son and he needed me. But Paul said the record would speak for itself when the time came. It was during this period that the dinner table incident happened. Renee's sister Candace had come to visit for the weekend. The three of us sat down for dinner. Marcus was there. Renee had been in a strange mood all day, distant and irritable. I had made pasta, which was Marcus's favorite. I was talking about something that had happened at work, something small and harmless, just trying to have a normal conversation. Renee cut me off, just interrupted me mid-sentence. She looked at her sister and said, "This is what I deal with every night. Work stories, logistics updates, thrilling stuff." She said it in a sarcastic voice. Candace laughed a little, then looked uncomfortable. I stopped talking. Renee kept going. She said, "He thinks showing up and being reliable makes him interesting. But honey, dependable and exciting are not the same thing." Then she looked at me with an almost bored expression and said, "No offense." I looked at Marcus. He was staring at his plate. I said nothing. I picked up my fork and I continued eating. Renee laughed again and changed the subject. Candace looked at me once with something that might have been pity and then looked away. That was the moment, right there, not because of what she said to me, but because of who was watching when she said it. My 8-year-old son heard his mother call his father nothing in a room full of people, and he did not say a word because he did not know what to do. He just looked at his plate. I decided that night, not tomorrow, not next week, that night. I called Paul from my car after Marcus went to bed. I told him I was ready. He said he had been expecting my call. He said the papers were already drafted. He said we could file Monday morning. I said, "What do I do between now and then?" He said, "Nothing that draws attention, just be normal. And then Monday morning before she wakes up, be gone." That weekend I was completely normal. I made breakfast on Saturday. I took Marcus to his soccer game. I smiled. I made small talk. I even asked Renee if she wanted to watch a movie that night and she said she was tired. I said okay. I went to bed at a normal time. On Sunday I packed while she was out showing a property. I did not take much, a bag of clothes, my personal documents which I had quietly moved to my office weeks earlier, my laptop, a framed photo of Marcus from his last birthday. I put the bag in the trunk of my car and drove back to the house and had dinner like nothing had happened. That night I lay next to her for the last time. I stared at the ceiling. I thought about the man I was when we met. I thought about how hard I had worked to build something real. I thought about how quietly it had all been taken from me. And I thought about my son and what kind of father I wanted to be for him. I did not feel angry anymore. I felt something calmer than that. I felt clear. Monday morning I was up at 5. Marcus did not have school until 8:30, so he was still asleep. Renee would not be up until 7 at the earliest. I made myself coffee. I stood in the kitchen and looked around at the house I had poured myself into for 9 years. Then I picked up my bag, walked out the front door, and drove away. By 7:15 I was sitting in Paul's office. By 8:45 the divorce filing was submitted to the court. By 9 o'clock I had sent Renee a single text message. It said, "I heard what you said about me on that phone call 3 weeks ago, and I heard what you said at the dinner table. I agreed with you. I am nothing. So I removed nothing from your life. You will hear from my attorney." I turned off that phone and switched to a new number. What came next unfolded over the following weeks and months in ways that Renee had clearly not anticipated. Because here is what she did not know. She did not know that Paul had already identified the $9,000 in transfers from the joint account. That financial movement, documented carefully, was flagged as dissipation of marital assets. It shifted the financial picture of our divorce significantly. She did not know that my consistent role as Marcus's primary caretaker was documented in school records, medical records, and 3 written statements from coaches and teachers who had watched me show up every single week for years. When the custody evaluation began, the picture was already clear. She did not know that the house, despite the joint ownership clause she had suggested, had a mortgage that I had paid 80% of across 9 years. Paul argued that contribution clearly, and it mattered. And she did not know that Derek, the man on the phone, the man she had been seeing, was a real estate colleague, a married one. That fact became known to his wife not through me, not directly, but through the legal proceedings that made certain financial records visible. I did not make that call. I did not send that message. But the truth has a way of moving on its own once the silence is broken. Renee called my new number 6 times the first day. I did not answer. She called my mother's house and my mother told her, calmly and without drama, that Daniel was not available and that she should speak to his attorney. My mother, God bless her, was built for this moment. Renee sent emails, long ones, some angry, some pleading. Paul had advised me not to respond to any of them personally, so I did not. Every communication went through the legal proc. That is how it should have been handled from the start. 3 weeks after I left, Renee's real estate firm became aware of the situation with Derek. She was not fired, but she was reassigned to a different office location. The professional relationship that had likely felt exciting and secret became complicated and uncomfortable. I did not cause that. Exposure causes that. The custody arrangement was finalized 4 months into the proceedings. Marcus would live primarily with me at my mother's house, which I was already in the process of renting a place near. Renee would have weekend visits and one night during the week. Marcus had spoken to a child counselor during the evaluation process. The counselor's notes, which neither side could fully control, reflected a child who felt more emotionally secure with one parent than the other. I will leave it at that. The financial settlement was not everything I had hoped for, but it was fair. I kept my investment account. The house was sold and proceeds split, though my higher contribution to the mortgage was factored in. The $9,000 she had transferred was accounted for. I walked away with enough to start clean. I found a 2-bedroom apartment 20 minutes from Marcus's school. I painted his room blue because he asked me to. I bought him a new desk because he said he wanted a real homework spot. I hung up his soccer trophies on a shelf above the window. The first night he slept there, he stood in the doorway of his room and looked around and said, "Dad, this is cool." And I had to turn away so he would not see my face. That was the moment the whole thing became worth it. Not the settlement, not the legal outcome, not anything that happened to Renee, that moment. My son in his doorway saying his room was cool. Renee and I have not spoken directly since the Monday I walked out. All communication about Marcus goes through a co-parenting app that logs everything and keeps it civil. It works. Marcus is adjusting. He is in counseling and his counselor says he is doing well. He still loves his mother. I would never want him to stop. But he also knows that his father is a man who stays, a man who shows up, a man who does not disappear when things get hard. I disappeared once and only once, and it was the bravest thing I ever did. I think about that phone call sometimes. The one I was not supposed to hear. She said I had no edge. She said I was nothing. She said I just went along with everything, and in a way she was right. I had been going along with things for years, accepting less than I deserved, convincing myself that patience and loyalty were always rewarded. But the moment I stopped going along was the moment I got everything back. My self-respect, my peace, my son sleeping in a blue room 20 minutes from his school. Some people ask me if I regret any of it, if I wish I had confronted her sooner, if I wish I had fought harder or louder or differently. I do not. I did it quietly. I did it with documents and attorneys and patience. I did not yell. I did not make scenes. I did not call her out in front of people the way she called me out in front of mine. I just left. And everything I needed came with me. She wanted nothing. She got exactly that. There is a version of this story where I stay, where I keep painting over the cracks, where Marcus grows up watching his father disappear a little more each year until there is nothing left of him to see. I am glad that version does not exist. There is a version where I explode, where I confront her in anger and say things that cannot be taken back and make the legal process ugly and traumatic for everyone, especially Marcus. I am glad that version does not exist either. The version that exists is the one where a man who was told he was nothing picked up one bag, walked out a door, and built something better on the other side of it. I am 44 now. I have my son 4 nights a week and every other weekend. I coach his soccer team on Saturday mornings. I just got promoted at work to regional director. I started working out again and sleeping through the night for the first time in years. Last month my mother told me I looked like myself again. I did not know how to explain to her how much that meant. I'm not angry at Renee. I want to be clear about that. Anger is a weight and I put it down. What she did was wrong. What she said was cruel. What she built behind my back was a betrayal I will never fully understand. But she is Marcus's mother and she will be in my life in some form for the rest of it. I choose to carry that with neutrality. Not warmth, not coldness, just neutrality. It is the only thing that works. What I want anyone who is listening to take from this is something simple. You do not have to fight loudly to win. You do not have to match cruelty with cruelty. You do not have to announce what you are about to do or explain yourself to people who have already decided what you are worth. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is go completely quiet, get completely organized, and then walk out the door without looking back. They will notice eventually, and by then it will already be too late. That is what happened to Renee. She wanted a man with edge, with excitement, with something unpredictable. What she got was something she never expected from the man she called boring. She got precision. She got patience. She got 11 years of loyalty turned into the most methodical exit she had ever seen. She called me nothing. I let her keep thinking that right up until the moment she could not anymore. And then I was already gone.